My recommendation is to honestly just go watch Hero of the Rails and just skip the season. Nothing of note happens in it. The only thing you need to know is that Hero does come back to Sodor. That's really the only major status quo change. Just watch the movie and save yourself the time. Watching this season was a chore, but maybe it will get better from here. Now that they've had a season to find their footing, maybe next year will be a little better. Oh no. Oh no. No, 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 no!
I really need to make my review on that movie.
The Thomas fandom is divisive for a lot of things. Some fans like Season 5, and some don't. Some people hate All Engines Go, and some don't. And whenever someone voices their opinions, they tend to get bashed on by someone else, and it turns into drama. But I think one thing almost every Thomas fan can unanimously agree on is that Misty Island Rescue is a bad movie. With one exception, I have not seen a single person in the Thomas fandom who claims they like this movie. That being said, I personally don't think this movie deserves the hate it gets. In fact, I'll say that Misty Island Rescue is decent, and today I'm going to explain why. This is my defense of Misty Island Rescue. So let's get the obvious out of the way. The intro is amazing. The music for it is really amazing, and I love the animation style. Every Miller era special has its own stylized intro, and this film is no exception. I also like how the film opens up with this nice introduction to the island of Sodor. I don't know why, I thought it was cool. One huge positive for me is, and I know this is going to be controversial, but it's Thomas. Some people say he's too unlikable, but I think that's the point. He's supposed to be unlikable. It's not like he's being unlikable for the sake of being unlikable. He only became that way after rescuing Diesel and being praised by Sir Topham Hatt.
I make good decisions, that's what I was told. I will not be fearful, I'll be brave and bold. That's what Sir Topham Hatt says.
Throughout the movie, Thomas has an arc. He becomes big-headed after rescuing Diesel, which causes him to make bad decisions despite thinking he makes good ones. Then, when he makes the absolute worst decision of his life, which is getting the logging locos trapped in the tunnel and causing them to run out of fuel, he realizes that he was wrong throughout the entire film and says this.
This is all my fault. I thought I knew better than you. I thought I always made right decisions. But I don't. I made the worst decision of all. I'm sorry.
I swear, everybody talks about Thomas in this movie as if he was a jerk for no reason and that he didn't learn anything. That's clearly not the case. Funny how the Unlucky Tug said,
Make Thomas get a big head from saving Diesel, and that's why he's an ass throughout the film, only to be humbled later when he makes a huge mistake.
Because that's exactly what happens in this movie. What was that the Unlucky Tug once said?
Like, what was the message here? It's okay to act stupid and mean and put your friends in danger, as long as you sound confident when you talk?
I had to break it yet, Tug, but that's not the moral. The actual moral in this film is...
You can't always be right all of the time.
Yeah, what they said. It's a very good moral, and it's one that we especially need in today's standards. Another thing I love about Thomas in this movie is how he reacts to many of the ridiculous contraptions on Misty Island. I like how he refuses to cross the Shake Shake Bridge.
This bridge is not safe. You must not use it.
And I love how he immediately doesn't like old Wheezy, and after seeing what he can do, refuses to use him. Hence why he decides to pour oil into Hee-Haw, just so he wouldn't have to use old Wheezy. If this isn't proof that the show staff were self-aware while writing this, I don't know what does. Let's talk animation, specifically Misty Island. While I don't like the idea of Misty Island itself, I do like how it's animated, particularly with the countryside aesthetic. The Hollow Tree Tunnel looks so good. I mean, look at those mushrooms. That's such a cool detail that they didn't have to add, but they did it anyway. Outside of all the ridiculous contraptions, the logging station too also looks so cool, and like a real place you could visit. I mean, look, that hook is moving. I don't like the Shake Shake Bridge, but I love how it's animated. With all these loose pieces of wood, some of which are falling, it looks like a bunch of wood cobbled together, which is what it is. I even like that the bridge collapses when Ferdinand goes over it, showing how heavy he is compared to the others, which makes me wonder what would happen if Hero or Spencer went over it. Oh. I would like to say more about the animation, but I feel like if I do, I'll just be repeating what the Thomas theorist said in his Great Tyranid video, so I recommend you go and check that video out instead. One underrated aspect about this movie is the logging logos. I don't hate these guys at all. In fact, I actually found them kind of hilarious on my latest rewatch. I think these guys had a strong introduction. They basically go around and are basically kept as mysterious as possible. Then when they are revealed, they're just staring angrily at Thomas as if he committed a crime or something. And then when he introduces himself, they take a complete 180 and just introduce themselves as if nothing happened. I like how they refuse to forgive Thomas after being rude to them. I would do the same if I were in their shoes. I like how they constantly get annoyed with Thomas when he says his constant rhyme.
I'm sure you have enough oil. I make good decisions. I make good decisions. That's what you were told. You will not be fearful.
You'll be brave and bold.
Very much speaking for the audience there. I like how they react to Sir Topham Hatt's name.
Who's Sir Topham Hatt? He sounds funny.
And I love the moment where they meet him. That being said, one thing I don't like about them is that they all have the same personality. This makes them all feel a bit redundant and not very interesting. I can sort of understand it with Bash and Dash, but Ferdinand, no way. If they each had a character trait that was unique to them, I would say they were good characters. So overall, I do not hate the logging locos. I don't understand why people call them annoying.
That's right. 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 That's right.
Okay, never mind. I can see why people call Ferdinand annoying, but not the other two. I can safely say they're okay in my books. There are some moments in this movie that I feel like mentioning. I like how the Misty Island tunnel doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It is set up earlier in the movie when Whiff mentions it to Sir Topham Hatt.
You can't build your office here, sir. It's the entrance to the old Misty Island tunnel. It's all blocked up.
I love how Sir Topham Hatt sends Whiff to work with Gordon and Gordon is upset about it. That's very in character for him. While not shown properly, I like how Sir Topham Hatt gives Percy this little pat on his buffer beam, assuring him that Thomas will be okay. I like how Percy keeps asking him where Thomas is.
Please, sir, what has happened to Thomas?
I love how Bash and Ferdinand give Dash a dirty look when he mentions the Misty Island tunnel.
I love the moment at the docks where Cranky feels bad for Percy when Thomas is missing and keeps a lookout for him.
There's still no sign of him.
And I love Sir Topham Hatt's line towards the end of the special.
Don't worry. I can find another hat, but I'll never find another Thomas.
These little moments are not much, but they are pretty slept upon, and I thought I'd mention them. But to me, the absolute best part of the movie is the post-credit scene.
You'll be laughing on the other side of your boilers soon, silly steamies. Yeah.
Everyone has already gushed over it, so I'll keep my opinion short. This scene is fucking awesome. I love how Diesel 10 is reintroduced. I love his dynamical laugh. And I love how this film even has a post-credit scene. I don't know why no other Thomas specials have one. It's so interesting. It's just a shame that the movie that came afterwards didn't live up to the hype. So while I did just defend Misty Island Rescue for having a strong story, decent characters, and some nice scenes here and there, that doesn't make it a perfect movie. Even though this is a video about me defending Misty Island Rescue, I would also like to point out some of the problems I, and many others, have with this special. After all, I don't want people to think I'm trying to be like Soda Productions, because I'm really not. I think the biggest issue with this movie is Diesel. So, Diesel has a subplot in this movie. He basically rolls over and tells Thomas that he's useful too. Thomas makes a racist comment and leaves. Diesel decides that he wants to prove how useful he is, so he decides to take the Joby Wood to the rescue center. Thomas spots Diesel and, thinking he's going too fast, for some reason, goes after him. We get an epic chase sequence before Diesel loses the Joby Wood and dangles over the edge. Thomas comes in and rescues him, thus boosting Thomas's ego and giving him a reason to go to the mainland, resulting in the plot happening. The problem is, that's it. That's all Diesel contributed to the story. His subplot just exists to give Thomas a reason to go to the mainland, which is how he gets lost on Misty Island in the first place. Except the whole thing about Thomas going to the mainland is abandoned halfway through the movie, and it's never brought up again. Same with Diesel. This also gives out a bad message. Thomas basically says that when Sir Topham Hatt says, really useful engine, he means really useful steamy. And since Diesel is not a steam engine, that means he can't be useful. What kind of message is that? Like, was this meant to be setting up Diesel's special delivery or something? Overall, this subplot gives a bad message and doesn't contribute much to the overall story. My second issue is, sadly, Whiff. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad he's in this. It helps flesh him out more, and I love how he's written. Him being the more authority type really suits him, considering the fact he wears glasses. I love that moment where he straightens his glasses and demands for the others to listen to him. But the problem with Whiff's role in the movie is that it makes absolutely no sense. So in the movie, Whiff is shown to know about the Misty Island Tunnel. He even said that he used to take garbage down there.
So, we used to take garbage down there.
Implying that he has been on Sodor for a long time. How can that be the case if he was introduced 3 years ago in season 11 and stated to be a new engine? Now, people have made the argument that the model and CGI series are different canons, and I do agree with that, but if we were going to treat them as the same canon, then there's no way that this can work. So overall, Whiff's role in the movie was good, albeit confusing. And that's really it in terms of major problems. Anything I point out after this would all just be nitpicking. Like, what happened to the 33 piles of Joby wood that was on the boat when it first arrived? Why are only 3 unloaded? Why is this unfinished bridge just out in the open? Shouldn't there be a barrier or something in front of it? How is there no room for Thomas on the boat? There's literally room at the top of the boat. Why does Thomas need the logging locos to come to Sodor with him? Why does Sir Topham Hatt send Gordon, Edward, and James to Misty Island instead of Harold or Captain? I don't really get as mad by this scene as the Unlucky Tug does, but I do agree that it's a plot hole. Overall, there's not really much wrong with this movie. Not enough for me to call it bad anyway. At the end of the day, opinions are opinions, and people are entitled to have their own thoughts. But with Misty Island Rescue, it's almost like there's a unanimous agreement that it's bad, if not the worst special of the entire franchise. I made this video to shed light on the positives with this special, as I got tired of hearing almost everyone bashing on it. And even after rewatching it myself, I don't think the same way as everyone else does. Is this special good? No, not really. But in my opinion, it's not bad either. It's just decent. It has some problems, but not enough for me to call it as a bad film. If you want to see an actual bad Thomas movie, go and watch Big Roll Big Adventures. It's the exact kind of film that most Thomas fans think Misty Island Rescue is. It's stupid, boring, has annoying new characters, and makes Thomas as unlikable as possible just so that the plot can happen. None of that, to that extent, is present with Misty Island Rescue. It may be dumb in a couple of areas, but I can at least sit through it without wanting to yell at the screen every 5 seconds. If anything, it's a lot more funny than frustrating. So overall, Misty Island Rescue is a decent Thomas movie. It has a surprisingly strong moral, a great character in Thomas, and it had genuinely funny moments. I give this movie a 6 out of 10. It could have been better in a couple of areas, but at the same time is nowhere near as bad as people say it is. Oh, but we're not done yet, folks. We have one more section to cover. That, of course, being my rewrite of Misty Island Rescue, keeping all the good stuff intact and fixing all the bad stuff. Because even though I don't think this movie is bad, I don't think it's good either. And I know a lot of Thomas fans absolutely despise this movie, so I'm going to rewrite it anyway, and hopefully my take won't be as hated as the actual product. This is my treatment of Misty Island Rescue. So the movie starts off as it did in the original, with that nice introduction to the island of Sodor. However, after this shot of Emily, the story changes, and we cut to a scene of the fishing village. Thomas puffs around a bend and notices smoke rising in the distance. An old barn shed is on fire and Percy is helping to put the fire out. Thomas decides to help as well. After a while, they hear a bell. Then Belle arrives and puts the fire out. Yes, I'm having Belle be introduced much earlier in the series. I think having her be introduced here makes a hell of a lot more sense than in Day of the Diesels. Flynn, however, will still be introduced in Day of the Diesels. After the events of that movie, Belle is turned back into a normal steam engine. Anyways, after putting the fire out, Belle runs out of water and Thomas and Percy shunt her to the nearest water tower, which just so happens to be near where the rescue center is being built. From this point to the scene at the docks, the movie remains mostly the same. I'll have the 3 Joby Wood cars that are unloaded be the first load of Joby Wood. Other than that, the scene at the docks remains mostly the same. Diesel then rolls over, Thomas makes his racist comment, and Diesel decides to shunt the Joby logs to the rescue center. The chase between him and Thomas is the same. When Diesel reaches the bridge, he crashes through the barrier and drops the wood into the sea. Thomas arrives and rescues him, but instead of being grateful for Thomas's help, Diesel is furious with Thomas and blames him for his accident, since he was the one who was chasing him, and both engines get into an argument. Kinda like that scene in Night of the Diesels where Gordon blames Diesel 10 for his accident when it was his own fault for going too fast and not paying attention to the line in front of him. The scene at the sheds plays out pretty much the same, except Sir Topham Hatt doesn't delay the rescue center until the new Joby Wood is found, and he doesn't reward Thomas with going to the mainland. The next day, Thomas and Percy wait to be loaded up with the Joby Wood. Salty rolls over and tells them about Misty Island. Whiff is also there delivering a train of garbage, and overhears the conversation. He's the one who says he might remember Misty Island instead of Edward. After Percy departs, Thomas asks Whiff if he can add more trucks to his train, as he wants to get the Search and Rescue Center project done faster. Whiff is reluctant, but Thomas assures him that he makes good decisions. Meanwhile, Diesel is shunting the Joby Wood trucks at the rescue center as punishment for his accident. He is so cross with Thomas that he doesn't pay attention to the line ahead. His trucks derail and spill out. Some fall into the sea and the rest on the track. Thomas suddenly approaches on the same track. He tries to stop, but he can't due to the momentum of his heavy train. He hits the logs, tumbles off the tracks onto a nearby ramp. All the logs on his train spill out and push him along the river. I know this sounds a bit over the top, but I needed to find a way to get Thomas to Misty Island, and right now I can't think of anything else that would work. When Sir Topham Hatt arrives, he gives Diesel a great scolding, and this is when he decides to delay the rescue project, as they now only have 3 flatbeds of wood left. Diesel rolls away and decides to hide away and stay in an old shed. While in there, he starts to wonder if maybe what Thomas said to him was the truth. Meanwhile, Thomas is drifting out to sea. He tries to call for help, but no one can hear him. He eventually drifts off to sleep, and when he wakes up, he finds himself beached on a small island. He sees a railway line, and somehow gets onto it from the raft. The scene when he first arrives on the island remains the same. The scenes where he meets the logging locos, he gets lost, Sir Topham Hatt gets the phone call that Thomas is missing, and when Thomas decides to ask the logging locos for help are cut. Instead, after Thomas races away, the place he stops at is the junction by the river. The scene afterwards remained the same, until we reach the logging station. When he arrives, he hears a voice and decides to investigate. He meets up with Bash and Dash. The two of them start teasing Thomas and playing tricks on him, until Ferdinand shows up and tells them to get back to work. When they do, Ferdinand apologizes for their behavior. He and Thomas introduce themselves, and Thomas asks him what happened here. Ferdinand takes a deep breath and tells Thomas his story. After hearing all this, Thomas feels sorry for the logging locos and decides to help them. He decides to bring them back to Sodor with him so that Sir Topham Hatt can give them a new home. From this point on, the movie remains pretty much the same. Thomas discovers Joby Wood, Sir Topham Hatt sends out a search party to find him, the logging locos introduce Thomas to all the ridiculous contraptions, Thomas decides to use all the oil for hee-haw, yada yada yada. Only this time, they have over 20 flatbeds of wood instead of 3. I wanted to give each engine an equal amount of cars and Dash something to pull. Thomas gets the logging locos trapped in the tunnel, he learns his mistakes and uses smoke signals. Percy tells Topham, and here's where we come back to the changes. Instead of Gordon, James, and Edward, Sir Topham Hatt sends Harold to Misty Island to locate the smoke signals. He tells them that they're coming from the tunnel. Since Bell is too long to fit through the tight curves of the tunnel, Sir Topham Hatt decides to send some of his smaller engines to go. Since Swift now remembers everything about his time on Misty Island, he sends him. Percy also decides to go since he's Thomas's best friend. Diesel also goes with them because he wants to make it up to Thomas for making him lost in the first place, and to return the favor for rescuing him. Percy lets Swift borrow his snowplow as there's going to be a lot of rocks to clear. When they arrive at the blocked track, they decide to call out to see if Thomas is there. When they find out he is, they battery ram through the wall, and there's a moment where Thomas says, "Wow, you came to save me, Diesel? After I was so rude to you?" And then Diesel's like, "Wow, you saved me. We're even now." And then Thomas starts to reconsider what he said about Diesel's. Swift's driver removes Percy's snowplow from him and puts it behind Diesel. But as soon as they are ready, the tunnel starts to collapse. The engines race away for as fast as they could. They make it back to Sodor just as the last bit of the tunnel collapses behind them. The scene where Sir Topham Hatt throws his hat, says his iconic line, and meets the logging locos takes place here instead of much later on. He is so impressed with the logging locos, he has them restored at the steamworks. After their restoration, he sends them to work at the logging yard, specifically the one from Henry's Forest. We still get the montage of the engines working together to build the rescue center. However, during that montage, we get a moment between Thomas and Diesel where they both apologize to each other. The rescue center is open and we get the post-credit scene with Diesel 10. Now, is my treatment perfect? No. But I don't think it would be as hated as the actual product.